Welcome to Profit and Prosper, a podcast that will empower you to become financially independent as an entrepreneur. I'm your host, Sarah Young, an entrepreneur, wealth coach, and mentor to driven, ambitious female business owners who are ready to take action towards having a richer and more impactful life. I'm here to push you to think bigger about what's possible for your business and life, and I believe that your business is the best way to have more time and financial freedom. Just 10 years ago, I was $55,000 in debt and leaving a traumatic marriage as a 20-something. Fast forward to today, I now run a 7-figure agency with a team of 10 and growing and have built over $1 million in net worth while balancing taking care of my health and prioritizing being a wife and mom. In this podcast, I will teach you how to scale your business, take home a 6-figure paycheck, and save and invest for your financial future without having to sacrifice your life today. What's up, y'all, and welcome back to the Profit and Prosper podcast. We are on episode number 2 of my Save 6 Figures series. So if you have not listened to episode number 1 in the series, that was last week, go check that out. In that episode, we talked about why 100K is such an important goal, why learning how to save and covering your financial basics is so important. We talked about what a 6-figure savings plan needs to include, and most importantly, how to create a plan that you can actually stick to. So go check that episode out before you dive into this one. And in this episode, we're going to talk about one of the topics I think causes the most confusion for most business owners. This is probably one of the most frequent questions that I get is this question of how much should I be paying myself? And specifically, how does that play into all of the other moving parts in your business? So making sure that you're keeping enough in your business, making sure that you're saving personally. What the heck do we do with taxes on the income that we're paying ourselves? Luckily, y'all, not to toot my own horn, but I am a CPA. You probably know this. I have a CFO and tax agency. I'm also a tax expert in addition to all the other money stuff that I do. And so unlike some other money coaches out there, I actually can answer questions about these topics so that when you do create your savings plan, you're not missing any important pieces that need to be factored in. We're going to make sure that we cover all areas of your finances because to me, I think that being holistic about your money stuff is what will actually get you results. So the question I want to talk about is how much can you afford to pay yourself and still save money? The reason that this I think is such a big issue, there's different things that happen to different business owners. Some people, when it comes to paying themselves, tend to take all of the extra money out of their business that they can. And that means that they don't save for business stuff and they don't save for taxes. Or on the other hand, in some cases, when it comes to paying yourself, you're not actually taking out enough to be able to save for personal stuff on top of your living expenses. Whichever situation is true for you, or if you're somewhere in the middle, which is probably the most likely situation, honestly, that's why I said go back to listen to episode 1. It's really important to have a plan and to understand what your spending priorities are because that will help you to answer this question of how much should I be paying myself versus how much do I need to be saving? Okay. So because this question comes up so frequently with my clients, when I built out the curriculum for Money Momentum, which if you did not listen to the last episode, Money Momentum is my all new group coaching program where I'm going to teach you how to save 5 and 6 figures in cash every single year from your business. When I was building out that curriculum, I decided to put in a whole section on owner pay and taxes. So inside Money Momentum, we have a financial literacy section. So we've got the skills that you need that I'm teaching, like the specific skills are different modules. Then I have an additional module on financial literacy basics. And within that, it's sort of a resource library for you to reference whenever you need it. And one of the things that's in there is there's a whole section on everything to do with taxes because taxes can be one of people's biggest expenses. And I'm bringing this up as we talk about owner pay because a lot of times the numbers can kind of be related, although owner pay doesn't always impact the actual taxable income on your tax return. The mechanisms that you're going to pull money out for owner pay are similar to the ones that you're going to use to pull out taxes. Like it's all just really related. So I put a whole section in there on taxes. We also have lessons on how exactly specifically calculating how much should you be paying yourself, whether you are a sole proprietor, a single member LLC, whether you have an S-Corp. There's different nuances that different businesses need to take into consideration. Also making sure that you don't run into the issue that I talked about a few minutes ago, which is taking every single extra dollar out of your business, which is going to drain your business of cash flow. So I put all of that in there. In addition to the specific trainings on these questions, obviously I'm there to coach on any of our coaching calls and walk through like your actual specific numbers. I also have a financial review feedback form where you can submit any of your spreadsheet, you can submit your numbers, and my team and I will look at it and tell you, this is how much you should be paying yourself. This is how much extra you have. This is what you should save, right? We can help give you guidance around what those numbers should actually look like because it is an area that causes a lot of confusion for people. So why do people have such a hard time figuring out how much should I be paying themselves? I want you to understand that it's because it's complicated. Like, I'm not going to tell you that it's the easiest answer. Like, the reason people have a hard time figuring it out is because it's complicated. And it's complicated because the owner pay amount is sort of in the middle of this sort of complicated money flow that business owners have. And I don't mean to say that like it's too complicated for you to learn. So please don't interpret that. What I'm saying is if you feel confused by this, it is because no one ever taught you about it, right? It's not your fault. It's just because it is hard. But it's one of those things that once you learn and once you understand how the flow works, it will become easier for you to understand and manage this for your own business going forward. So why is this so difficult for people? I think on the one hand, people don't know how much they can actually take out of their business. How much can I afford to take out? I see a lot of business owners who are afraid to take money out because they're like, well, what if I get a surprise bill? What if my tax bill is higher? What if I don't make any more sales? Like, what if? That's why we have to create a cash flow plan and figure out what is your buffer that you need to maintain in your business. We don't want to take out cash in excess of that buffer unless you absolutely must take out the cash in excess of that buffer. So we have to figure out what the buffer is, and then anything above and beyond that is what is sort of more free and clear for you to decide. Do I take it as owner pay? Do I need to cover taxes? Do I need to save it? Do I have something in my business I want to save for? Whatever that is. And I'll also add before we talk about the next reason this is hard, your buffer amount is going to depend on different factors, including sales that you have coming in, your expenses in your business. It'll change if you have really more consistent income month over month versus if you're the type of business that has income like launches or big contracts, but they pay you like 2 or 3 times a year instead of on a monthly basis. It's going to depend. Your buffer that you need depends on the money flow in your business. Another reason people have a hard time understanding how much they can pay themselves is that they don't actually know how much they need. You don't know how much you need to be paying yourself for your personal life. A little soapbox moment, okay? Warning. Especially if you are married or in a long-term committed relationship, if you have any sort of financial sharing with a partner, a lot of women defer all of that management to their partner. And that results in them not knowing their numbers and not knowing how much does it take your household to live each month. Like, what are our living expenses? These are things we need to understand. And that's why back in the previous episode in the series, I talked about the importance of setting financial goals so that you can answer the question, well, how much do I need? Because when my clients ask me that, like, how much should I pay myself? A lot of times my answer, if they have the money to be paying themselves, my initial question back will be, well, how much do you need? That's part one. We need to get there. So we got to figure out how much you need and make sure you set your goals. In a lot of cases too, another reason people struggle is that they may have excess. They may have extra cash being generated in their business above and beyond what they even need to pay their bills, and they just don't know what to do with the difference. They just don't know. And again, I'm going to go back to have goals, set your goals, and have a plan for your money so that when you have an excess of cash in your account, you know, hey, my priority one right now is to save. I'm going to save for this purpose. And I put it over in my savings account. We're going to give every dollar a job. I learned that phrase, give every dollar a job, and I've said it on the podcast before. I learned it from the budgeting software, You Need a Budget. They have this rule where every dollar in your bank accounts personally, you have to assign it for a purpose, whether it's savings or not savings. They don't really talk about like saving money in that way, but they say more like give every dollar a job in terms of spending. Like even your savings will have a future spending purpose. Like what are you saving for specifically? And you put it in that bucket. So if you don't know what to do with the difference, you have to answer the question of like, well, what are your priorities? We talked about this in the last episode. And the last piece I would say that people struggle with is that they're afraid to get it wrong. You're afraid to take too much money out of your business because then if you run out of cash in your business and you have to rely on your savings, then somehow that's a failure. I've actually done this to myself before. Like I specifically have savings in my business, in my personal life. And there have been times where I have had to use that savings for whatever reason. And it was so hard the first time I actually needed to draw down on that savings to put into our personal accounts to pay the bills. Because I was like, oh my God, am I failing? Especially as a money person, as a CFO, am I a massive failure because I don't have the money to pay myself for this week? And I was like spiraling, right? The reality is every business will have inconsistent income months. You'll have months that are slower than others, and that just is a fact of life. And that is why we have savings. So you're afraid to get it wrong, as in you're afraid to take the money out and then need to put it back later. That's why we have savings. So hopefully if you take all the money out, you're at least saving it up for a rainy day. You have those buffers so that if you do get it wrong and if you do need the cash flow, then that's there. And you're not failing if you have to use these savings that you specifically set aside for that exact purpose. So now let's talk about the question of how much can I afford to pay myself? This is a question people ask me verbatim all the time, and I'm going to sort of talk out of both sides of my mouth here for a second. On the one hand, I don't love the question of what can I afford, at least not as a long-term question. As a short-term question is a tactical, like how much actual money do I have in my account that I can afford to take out and pay myself? It is valid. In terms of the long term, this is not the question I like to ask because I think that it anchors you down on the low end of what is possible for you. So we think about traditional money advice. It is aimed at the 90% of the population. When I got that 90% because there's 330 million people in the United States-ish, and then 30-ish million businesses, I think, the last time I checked. So 10% business owners, 90% employees. Most financial advice is aimed at the 90% of people who are employees, who have a fixed W-2 salary. And so for them, the way to save more is to spend less because they can't earn more income easily. But you are not that person, right? So I think that anchoring yourself on the low end for long-term goals is not the right place to be because I want you to be clear about how much can I actually earn? Like what's possible for me? And obviously in Money Momentum, in the program for savings, I'm not talking about earning more money. That's outside the scope of that program. Scaling Made Simple is my other program that I have that will help you to make more money in your business, but that is outside of the Money Momentum program. But how much can I afford as a long-term question? I don't want you to focus on. I want you to focus on for the long term of like, what is my potential? How much do I need? Going back to the be, do, have, the North Star goals that we talked about in the last episode, what do you want for your life? And then how much money do you need for that? And that's where we want to anchor our goals, right? Is in the bigger picture. But in terms of a short-term tactical, I have X amount of cash in my business bank account now. How much can I afford to pay myself? That is a totally valid question to ask, okay? The short answer is how much do you need? How much do you actually need to be able to pay yourself, to cover your living expenses, and to save, to set aside the money that you want to hit your savings goals? You need to figure that out, and that's part of what we do in the overall savings plan exercise is to figure out what are those numbers. And then maybe today you don't have the money in your account, you're not making the income or you're not having the profit that you need to be able to do that today. But the point is that we know what that is and we take steps to work there. So we need to figure out how much you need to live and how much do you need to save to hit your goals, right? To answer the short-term question though of how much can I afford right now in this very second, we need to figure out for your business, what does your money situation look like? So we need to figure out on a monthly basis, what are you bringing in sales? And that can be either sales you have under contract, what you typically do in a month. We have to do some sales planning to understand what you're expecting to bring in sales. And then we're also going to look at, okay, what are all your expenses, right? What are you spending on? Do you have team, software, office costs, supplies, whatever it is? We need to figure that out. Sales minus expenses is profit, right? This is not a new idea. I've talked about this before. We want your profit to cover your pay, your taxes, and then your business savings or your savings overall. If your sales minus expenses ends up being less than what you need to pay yourself, then you're going to have to troubleshoot. You are either in that situation, you're either overspending or you are under earning. As a very short-term solution, the answer is probably you're overspending. So if you're not consistently bringing in the income that you want to live the lifestyle you want, then you have to make the choices in the short term of spending on the things that are the absolute top priority and then cutting out spending on the rest. And the reason that I say that's the short-term solution is typically that can be a very quick lever to pull if you are not making ends meet, if you find that you're breaking even, if you're spending every dollar you bring in. That can be a really quick solution to just in the short term, cut expenses out and give yourself more of a buffer. In the longer term, I think one, we do want to make sure you're not overspending because I've seen so many businesses who, as their sales grow, their expenses just keep up and their personal expenses just keep up, right? They have business lifestyle inflation and they have personal lifestyle inflation. And honestly, we need to make sure that you're not overspending. Going back to the question of what are your priorities for your money and making sure that you are spending in alignment with those priorities and saving in alignment with those priorities. But as a business owner, I think that one of the most powerful things we can do is to earn more. Under earning can be a result of so many different things that I can't go into in this one podcast episode. But in many cases, sometimes the answer is, hey, your goal is to live this type of life. Your goal is to do, be, and have these things. You have to figure out okay, my revenue is going to have to be X amount higher in order to pay for all the things that I want. So having the right goal, understanding what numbers do I need to hit in order to hit the goals that I want is the longer term solution that we need to make sure you are addressing. And I will say, even though money momentum is not about the tactics of how do we scale our income, how do we make more money in our business, I do think that working on your money stuff, that finally feeling hey, I'm good at money, I'm taking care of it, building up more of a savings buffer, which in turn helps you feel more stable, helps you feel less stressed. All of those things will absolutely factor into your ability to go make more money. Because if you feel more safe with your money, you're more likely to go and do the big, bold things that will actually help you grow your business versus if you feel fear, if you feel like you don't have enough, if you are operating from a place of scarcity, it is going to be that much harder to grow your business. Now, on the other hand, we talked about if your profit in your business is not enough to troubleshoot, if your profit ends up being more than enough, then you need to pay yourself, then the answer is take out what you need to pay yourself, take out what you need to cover your living expenses, and save the rest. It is that simple. That's why we need to know how much you need to live, because we want to just take out, I need $10,000 a month. That means take out $10,000, and then whatever's left above your business buffer is going to go over into your savings account for the future goals that you have. Now, in the next week's episode, we're going to talk about what to do if your income is inconsistent and how that impacts your ability to pay yourself consistently and save money. And so come back for episode 3. We talk about that because like I said, I think in the last episode, I have seen hundreds of financials, and I have never seen a business that has the exact same revenue month over month. It just doesn't happen. That's just a fact of life that business will fluctuate. And so we need to be able to be prepared to continue paying yourself on a consistent basis, even if your income is inconsistent, and to continue saving, even if your income is inconsistent. So come back next week. We'll talk about that. But there's ways that if you're aware of it, you can absolutely restructure some things in your business to make sure that you are creating more consistent income where possible. A lot of times it has to do with actually taking the activities or doing the activities that you need to do to keep bringing leads into your business while also serving customers. That's obviously not something I teach in Money Momentum. That is more of a Scaling Made Simple topic, but it is crucial for understanding your savings. And then there's also ways that we can fake recurring income. So we have clients who have, very large contracts, for example, that maybe only get paid twice a year. And then we've got to figure out, okay, how do we make this money last until the next time the contract gets paid? So there's definitely ways that you can use your different systems, money systems, to fake recurring income. The last caveat that I want to make is for you S-Corp owners. And so that layers in a whole other layer of complexity. So earlier when I said it's not your fault that it feels hard to understand how much you can take out and pay yourself and save and cover taxes, and it's because it's complicated, right? And so when we layer in S-Corp, that's a whole other thing. So hopefully as an S-Corp owner, you know already that you should have a W-2 salary to pay yourself as the CEO of your business. But that does not stop you from also taking profit distributions. So with S-Corps, the way that we structure those is to pay yourself as reasonable of a salary as you can while also making it as low as can be reasonable. Because the lower the S-Corp salary, typically the more that you save in taxes. But that may not be, like, I'll have clients where they're like, well, you want to lower my salary, but this isn't enough to pay my bills. Like, well, that's fine. We can also set up a profit distribution above and beyond that, where combined together, you are covering all of your needs. So we just have to make sure that we balance in your planning, that we balance the salary that you take and distributions. So I'm going to wrap this episode here, but to recap, we talked about why it is so difficult to figure out how much to pay yourself, some of the different factors you need to consider to answer the question of how can I pay myself and also have enough money to save? How do I do both at the same time? And as a reminder, next Friday, November 3rd, is my free masterclass where we are going to dive deep into the 3 tools you need to save 6 figures from your business. Go to sarahhyoung.com/momentum to sign up, or just click the link in the show notes. And if you come to the masterclass and sign up for Money Momentum by November 6th, that following Monday, then you get the free bonus, which is where I will do a cash flow audit and a plan for you specifically, one-on-one. All right, so I will prepare that for you and send it to you so that you can really hit the ground running and hit all of your savings goals that you want to hit. So that's it for this week and part 2 of the Save 6 Figures series. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you back next week for part 3. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Listening and learning is great, but implementing what you learned is even better. So what's one thing you can do this week to make more money in your business, save for your financial future, and start living your most prosperous life? If you found this episode helpful, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and share with a friend, because it helps me reach more amazing female entrepreneurs like yourself. See you in next week's episode.